Where there is hope, that's an old saying that hopefully you're clinging on to as a Florida State fan. And if you've got hope, considering what has been a dismal season and off season thus far as a Florida State fan, you are one optimistic son of a gun. So we do appreciate you. We're always going to bring the facts and the narrative straight forward, but obviously you all root for Florida State football, so we want the best for you, including our guy right here, Georgitis from the Renegade Report. Here through thick and thin, George, you show up regardless.
Look, for lack of having a good paper bag laying around, I apologize. It's audio only. But yeah, a bit embarrassed to show my face. It's kind of tough, doing these conversations. We were just talking about it off air. The conversations are a little different than they were a few years ago, but there's plenty of good stuff to talk about. We'll probably start with the big retirement, but glad to be here, and we're gonna do it. We're gonna talk Florida State football. Mom always said growing up, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So the amount of content we're putting out is a lot smaller than it was a couple years ago, but we'll try to be nice about it and try to find a silver lining here and there. But the lame duck campaign is in full force.
Well, just to stay consistent with the narrative there, I don't have a banner for you, George, so let me put that one together. People have come in here and erased just about everything I've got, so we'll get that together just to let everyone know that they're talking to George and hearing from George. And of course, the Renegade Report is a great destination for Florida State football coverage. So let's start with Gus Malzahn. There was a lot of hope. That seems to be a word I've already brought up about 10 times. A lot of hope going into last season because obviously an accomplished offensive mind in college football, joining forces with Mike Norvell, trying to squeeze as much out of a Florida State offense as possible. And Gus Malzahn has, I guess, hung up his headset. And if you can kind of talk us through the transition there and what do you expect to see coming up in 2026?
Yeah, to keep it consistent with the narrative and what we've been talking about just about every time we talk here the past month or two, it just really, the optics are so bad, and it ties in with everything else that makes this a lame duck year. You've got 2024, you go 2-10. To your point, okay, let's bring in a proven guy at offensive coordinator. He's a Bama killer. We start the year out with Bama. This guy's pretty much the head of Mike Norvell's coaching tree. You're forcing him to become a CEO and give up play calling duties. So who does he bring in? His best buddy. Okay. It wasn't the best thing in the world, but at least this time last year, I said, okay, the school went out and given the position they were in, they went out and made the best moves they could to try to fix it and get things better for the next year. We all know how it turned out. Tommy Castellanos wasn't quite the guy to get us to 8 or 9 wins to really get this thing turned around like we thought he was. But I didn't think Malzahn did a bad job. I thought Malzahn did pretty good. But it was pretty clear throughout the season that he wasn't that happy. He was not ecstatic to be here. He's never been a big press guy, but the answers he would give to questions were not the ones you give to try and BS or just placate somebody because you're locked in. He was leaving the door open on stuff like, we'll see. The door was wide open for him to retire after the season. And we talked about it here. We thought that was done. There was a good 2 or 3 weeks when everybody I talked to, we thought he was going to retire. Well, he doesn't. He ends up not retiring. He stays on past all that. You get all the signings in. And here we are, the actual Old National Signing Day. And he retires. In my mind, was it already decided 2 months ago? And Mike Norvell's like, let's just avoid the criticism of the offensive coordinator search. And I'm going to take over play calling duties like I always wanted to. I never wanted to give it up. Who are we going to go get? If we go get somebody, we're going to have to guarantee him 3 or 4 years of pay for him to come here in this lame duck situation. So what do we do again that I was railing on and complaining about last time we talked? Oh, we promote another guy. So now Tim Harris, your wide receiver coach you got from USF with Malzahn, now he's your offensive coordinator in name only. It's going to be Mike's show again. which is fine. Like, if you want to sit here and argue the merits of his play calling, I don't think Mike is a terrible play caller. Even in 2024, he was scheming stuff up, and guys just weren't catching passes, getting penalties, whatever the case may be. I've never been a fan of his rotation structure and like when he would pull a running back and put a running back here, but he's always schemed guys open. That's never been the problem. So is Gus Malzahn retiring the like this biggest thing in the world, and it would just break your back if you had an otherwise healthy outlook on the season? No, but right now it's just another rock in an avalanche of things that makes you seem like a non-serious program. Yeah, it's tough to see him go. Herb Hand staying is huge to me. I think that was the one coach I thought that was the most important on the staff to retain going into year two, because I trust him. He's just never had a terrible offensive line. There is a baseline floor of what his offensive lines do. So really glad about that. But yeah, the optics and Malzahn retiring now instead of a couple months ago, it just goes to show that they're punting on the season and saving a couple $1,000,000.
Here we go, George. I'm going to give you my comparison, and then I want you to correct me if I'm wrong in regards to my evaluation of Norvell in-game coaching. So I'm immediately thinking Ryan Day, Ohio State. Ryan Day is one of the best offensive minds in the country. He called his own plays at Ohio State, and when you're going 11-1 every year, there shouldn't be much criticism. However, of course, they were losing big games, Michigan, playoff games, etc. So anyway, and we know that the complexity of the head coaching role has become greater and greater with NIL, with transfer portal, with everything going on. They're more CEO, executive, and less can be involved in just running one side of the ball. So he gives it up to Chip Kelly. All is well. Ohio State wins a national championship, and he can focus on, and much like Mike Norvell, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, there weren't like huge gaps in Ryan Day's game in terms of in-game coaching. I'm not talking about Mike Norvell running the program, but in-game coaching that you could just point to and say, there's a Mario Cristobal kind of gaffe or a James Franklin kind of gaffe here and there. There were none of those there. From what I remember of Mike Norvell in game, now you could talk about, is the team prepared? Is the team motivated? Those things. But in terms of in game, and if his job is obviously on the line, and if this is what he does better than anything else, maybe if his season's on the line, if his coaching career's on the line at this level, of course, he's going to go find a job somewhere. But at this level, he will never get this kind of job again if he doesn't succeed here. Maybe it's best if he runs the whole deal.
Look, hey, there's a reason. Same reason Billy Napier didn't hire a play caller over at Florida. He knew the deal. It was on him. So I don't blame him. Bet on yourself, like you're saying. Go out on your own shield. So I'm with it. And my issues with Mike Norvell and his in-game coaching has never been, you called a screen on first down instead of running this down. Never anything like that. I've always respected his play calling, and he schemes guys open. Uses the running backs out of the backfield a lot more than Malzahn. Had a lot more complicated passing concepts and things of that nature, and Jordan Travis thrived under it. DJU had guys open, couldn't hit them. Kind of a similar thing we had with Malzahn and Tommy this year, but it's always been, to me, he goes for it a little crazy on fourth down sometimes. Some of the time management stuff and, the rotations. That's been my issues. But no, I agree. And, you could compare it to Jimbo Fisher, tons of coaches who felt that pressure and at some points were forced to change and then took it back. It's a new era. And, I'm of the mind that a CEO is better, just because how can you tell me a guy that does that full time and that's all they do isn't going to be better than somebody who's the head coach at this point? Yeah. I guess it's just if there's that big of a gulf, if it's Nick Saban and he wants to coach the defense, you let them do it. But for the most part, it's better to have a Kirby Smart there if you can help it. But to your point, will Mike ever coach again if he flames out this year? I almost think he doesn't have a chance. Like, I don't even think he's coaching for his job. I think it's, to your point, just like this is interviews. This is like putting out there for other teams and where he's going to go next. But there is no more Nick Saban rehab clinic left. So it's going to be curious to see what some of these coaches that otherwise could have went and worked for Saban for 3 or 4 years and got another shot do. Who becomes that guy now?
Yeah, I don't even think he gets a Tulane or a Memphis kind of job. I think he's, in the mid to lower G5 or the mid G5 kind of status, App State or somewhere like that, if he chooses to go that route. George, I used to think that, and I think I served this up once or twice when you've been with us, and I certainly did with the other crew when we had James, Logan, and Jason. But I thought that it would be fascinating to do a huge series run through of the downfall of Jimbo Fisher and the downfall of Florida State and how the relationship went bad and all the things involved, and then how he obviously took off for Texas A&M. And now I think the more fascinating one would be the downfall of Florida State since 2023, and looking through all the missteps and everything and trying to determine at its core whether Mike Norvell had this program in a good place. Obviously, record-wise and on the field, it was in a good place, but were those smoke and mirrors, and structurally it wasn't where it needed to be, and then it fell apart? Or did he, in fact, for 2 full seasons, bring it to a status that Florida State fans are accustomed to and where the program should be, and then it fell apart? Our buddy Jimmy is asking kind of that same question right here. Florida State looks to be in a free fall. How did this happen? And so, maybe that's a series for on down the line, but how do you review and assess from the last bit of 2023 and when it was going so well, and maybe it started to come apart before that, just under the surface, to date, and what in the world happened?
So, and it's crazy. I mentioned it earlier where Indiana is right now. They got a chance to go to the playoff and they won the national champion. But the 2023 Florida State team, Mike Norvell had not recruited great. Okay. He did amazing in the portal. He was early on the portal and dominated that. But that was going to be the first ever non-blue chip team to have a chance to win the national championship. I believe our blue chip ratio was in the 40s at that point in time. Okay. Now, Indiana just busted the label off of that thing with like 7% or whatever it is now. But they're built exactly how Mike Norvell built the 2023 Florida State Seminoles. He got 15, 20 guys out of the portal 2-3 years in a row. The first batch, a lot of the guys came back. Jared Verse came back for another year. You got all these guys back, and you had a great run. What happened, where the fall off happened, where the free fall began, and, I can't prove this, and who knows if, to your point, the wheels were ready to fall apart. I don't think they were. I just think the way that Mike Norvell built that program, they needed that playoff appearance. And if Florida State wins the ACC championship, goes in the playoffs, that portal class coming out of that needed to be through the moon. It needed to be the best one yet, because you're going to lose, 10 guys to the NFL. I think 13 guys total, like 9 got drafted or something like that. I could be talking out of my butt. It's been 3-4 years ago now. But that didn't happen. And then the portal strategy of them going and getting guys who are ready to step on the field, Keon Coleman, Jeremiah, all these people, that didn't happen. We got a bunch of freshmen and sophomores, that were 5 stars the previous year, but had 0 experience, and kind of did that across the board. And you staked your claim on DJ Uiagalelei. Now, the basis of all this, though, is that Mike Norvell had not recruited high school at any kind of elite level. So that's the compensation of trying to get younger players in that 2025, I guess it would have been called, recruit portal class, or the 24 portal class. it was a massive failure. And with his recruiting, the way it's always been and how he built it through bringing in experienced guys from the portal, that 1 year gap, it collapsed it. And when his recruiting was slowly trending up and you thought he might get into and have top 10 classes, that coincided with the fall off on the field. And yeah, it's basically a house of cards that he built and couldn't keep it going. Unfortunately, but I think that's the big difference. We're going to see what happens to Indiana. We'll see if they can prove that this is something that you can do year in and year out and have a program built with transfers that are 4th, 5th, 6th year guys. But Florida State failed. That's for sure. The 2-10, once you go 2-10 at that point, it's hard to get public perception and put yourself in these recruits' shoes. If you've got an offer from, I won't even name another school, and you've got the same offer from Florida State, the same amount of money, and you're looking at what's been going on here the past couple of years, I wouldn't blame you for not picking Florida State right now, as much as it pains me to say that. We've got to get guys. Luckily, we got the Desir twins to say, and a couple other things. There are some positives in there, but I guess that's where I'd pinpoint it. Just that portal class coming out of 2023, and beyond even the talent on the field, the emotional and psychological damage that did of not getting put in. It was like, we were the center of the attention on TV for you're not good enough. Like, it really killed them.
Yeah, so I'm hearing like 4 things. Number 1, Mike Norvell was never a strong high school football recruiter, so that was never up to Florida State standards. Number 2, he brought in 2 great recruiting or transfer portal classes, and the hopes of keeping up, bringing in hauls that have Keon Coleman and Braden Fisk and Jared Verse and on and on and on and on is a tough one to keep going. Number 3, they missed the playoff or are not. Let me state that more correctly. They are not selected to go to the playoff. And yes, the public perception, the overall perception of that had to hurt transfer portal, recruiting, et cetera, et cetera. And number 4, and I've made this case with all sorts of examples on the plus side and the negative side across college football during this transfer portal era. Coach and quarterback, it's almost like the NFL. They're tied at the hip. What coaches have made good transfer portal additions at quarterback and which one made poor decisions at quarterback and it cost them? And obviously his last 2 were not the best of decisions.
You hit on a sore spot there. And it's, you brought up, number 1 on the list was high school recruiting. Well, who has he brought in at high school quarterback? It's pathetic when you go down the list. Not to call those young men pathetic. It didn't work out at Florida State. We've had some nice ones. But no, nobody even close to being a starting level quarterback at Florida State. No one. And then you want to talk about the portal ones. Tommy, the best one by far. Still quite imperfect, and we all saw how that turned out. But we can thank David Hale. He did a nice little tweet just basically rubbing salt in FSU fans' wounds. Like, it hurt my pride to read it, but one of the things it said on there, under Jordan Travis, 130 touchdowns, 24 turnovers. Without, 75 touchdowns, 45 turnovers. So to your point, yeah, pretty big difference. Pretty big difference. And Jordan Travis was a guy who, Willie Taggart brought in from the portal and was about ready to go to receiver until Kenny Dillingham talked him into sticking with quarterback. So yeah, number 4 on the list. You're definitely right about that one. That's a big one. Is quarterback evaluation, recruiting, portal, all of it. They haven't found an answer, and we'll see. We got the quarterback competition from our guy from Auburn, and the JUCO quarterback Malachi Marshall. I'm kind of hoping he wins the competition, but we'll find out.
And a lot of people would come back to that fourth point and say, well, if you don't have the money in this day and age, you're not going to get a top flight quarterback. And there's some validity to that. However, I can think of Minnesota, Iowa, USC, even with Jaden Mayava playing at UNLV. I could name 10 or 12, at least 10 or 12 other schools that, no, they didn't go out there and get Cam Ward or whomever was the equivalent the season before or the season after. But they went out and got really good quarterbacks who were upper, half of the Big Ten or that particular conference quality of quarterback. So it did have a lot to do with evaluation too. Florida State certainly had the money and the name brand to get guys that Iowa got and Minnesota and some other schools like that when they went out and got pretty good quarterbacks.
Yeah. Hey, there's no doubt. If you want to make a number 5 and start talking about money, we can do that. It blows my mind. The Tommy Castellanos, that one particular one, I was pretty vocal. Like, it kind of made sense with what they were doing, what they were trying to do, and who they brought in. But outside of that, every other one, yeah, it's just it's hard. Whether you watch Cal pick up a Fernando Mendoza, out of the blue, like we couldn't. Out of the 6 guys you recruited out of high school, you don't hit on any at some point in time. Like, it's not easy. But again, to your point, you can get a guy even out of the portal. I'm blanking on like names of decent quarterbacks out there, but they whiffed. You go get a guy in DJU who's way down. Never, you knew what the ceiling was there. You ended up getting the floor of him, but a similar thing with Tommy Castellanos. You weren't getting the hope wasn't there. It wasn't this young up and coming player. It was kind of, what you got and buckle up, Buttercup. We'll see how Ashton Daniels and Malachi Marshall turn out, but Mike Norvell's track record with quarterbacks at this point is 0 at Florida State outside of Jordan Travis. And that, like I said, that doesn't go under his recruiting or analyzing or anything. That's just what he was left with. And he was forced to play him over a guy with one leg who the school that loved him to death and went on this magical run, said it wasn't good enough for them, So tough stuff.
Yeah. I'm thinking of guys like Mark Gronowski, Iowa, Max Brosmer, Minnesota. I came up with a few other ones. Guys that they're not star quarterbacks, but they're pretty good. They're really good. Luke Altmaier, Illinois, guys that wouldn't have cost that much money. Miller Moss, who went to Louisville.
Luke Altmaier, that's the guy you had committed. You had Altmaier committed. You can't keep him.
Right. Yeah.
That's a great one to bring up. If you could have landed him, who knows where we're at right now? Maybe you take your bruises with him in 24 and have a pretty good season last year, but nope.
I forgot that they had him. Absolutely.
All the good ones got away.
We got George here from the Renegade Report breaking down some Florida State football. And we have just here in the last 24 hours, a lot of articles, a lot of information out there about the football program in regards to the health of the finances. And I have not dug into this, so I don't even know how to set you up at this point, George. So I'll let you take it from there in regards to what's been released, what kind of numbers. I see 437 million as the highest athletic-related debt in the country. I saw Rutgers up there as well. So what do you make of all of that?
It's a bit of an overarching theme. And one of the things, again, we talked about the last time I was on here, it really feels like, and I don't know the range. I don't know what's the average is, the median of this number set. I just know we've got one of the worst ones. It's 71% of the debt of the entire university, that 437 million. So I guess, about 600 million total debt for the university, and 437 is football. I don't think that's too crazy. I think, if you look in their credit rating and their likelihood to pay the debt back and all those things from a financial prospect, they're a jewel. They're fine. There's no problem there. They just built $100+ million football only facility. They're buying up hospitals. Tallahassee, I forget, I don't want to say that name. I think it's Tallahassee Memorial Hospital. They purchased it. They've upgraded the stadium, all kind of great upgrades there. So where the money came from and all that. They spent all the money on lawyers to go sue the ACC. They pretty much won that situation. It goes back to how we've ended up in this situation of them keeping Mike Norvell after 24 and then keeping him after this year, after all those losses, Stanford, Virginia, you ring them up. It feels like they're looking at this debt. Let's service this debt for 2 or 3 years. 2030's coming around the corner. The ACC buyout will be gone. Big Ten, SEC is going to be adding teams. It feels like they're just punting for that. Could this $437 million debt be part of that? Part of the reason they didn't pull the trigger on Mike Norvell? I don't know. You'd really have to ask Michael Alford, who's out here sending emails, basically telling everybody that we know it sucks, but I promise I'm doing all the right things, and we have a plan for the future. I don't know what that plan could possibly be. If they do have a plan, it's something they can't say out loud because it can involve Mike Norvell. And frankly, it likely doesn't, as much as I like Mr. Alford, probably doesn't involve him after how this year's going to go. But we'll see. I don't know. I'd be fine with that being $500 million instead of 437, and we start fresh, Mark. But I'm not a big booster, and I'm not one of the big money people at Florida State. Is this we lost Mr. Dunlap, our probably biggest booster in the history. His name's everywhere. I believe his wife is still around and contributing. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like behind the scenes, but it's just another kind of thing that stands out there and doesn't really look good from a PR perspective in the media, and it is what it is.
Well, the one thing that comes to mind that might be the one thing that Florida State has done right in the last 1.5 to 2 years because of that debt is work out that new revenue share with the ACC to at least get that 60% to be split in regards to TV ratings and popularity rather than just be split equally. That's going to squeeze out a few more million, but it's not going to certainly tackle that kind of debt.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And just the strategy, the amount of money they're going out here for portal kids, the guys offering out of high school, the amount of money coming on the collective bargaining end from the school, which is, I don't even want to talk out of my butt, but I'm pretty sure it's less than 10 million. And then you get what you get from Battle's End. Obviously, they're having to, really, really ask for donations to the booster department. Maybe a couple years ago when you're putting together the 23 squad and the Battle's End is brand new, you're telling a lot of those boosters, well, let's invest in the collective here and get that going, because that's the only way you could play players before. The waters are really muddy. At the end of the day, it just feels like Florida State is outside of the infrastructure and things they're building. They're operating the football department like Syracuse or, whoever, Louisville. Not even, because Louisville's pretty efficient with what they do. They win their little 8 games every year. So I wouldn't even say Louisville. Syracuse, that's the good one that comes to mind. You're like 39th to 44th, depending on which service you look at in portal rankings. And a lot of that has to do with perception, but you can buy a top 10 portal class. You just simply can. They weren't willing to do it. Who the heck, what momentum did Texas Tech have last year? What, PR did they have going? They were in obscurity, and they dropped whatever they dropped, $40 million, and they bought themselves a ticket to the playoffs.
And it's an ACC that, outside of what Miami has seemingly built in the last couple of years, can be had. Uh, Certainly, it's not a dominant conference with any dominant elite programs. But yeah, Florida State's missing out on what they could take advantage of, and look like they were, especially with Clemson's downfall and Virginia Tech not being what they used to be, and a lot of middling programs. But and also trying to prep themselves for leaving the ACC at some point, and making themselves as attractive as possible. You would think would have been the goal, and probably was the goal for the next shakeup.
Yeah, my mind goes to get it fixed and be at your absolute best and competing for titles the second it's time for that move to come. But apparently they're waiting for the move to come and then maybe start getting serious about football again. Apparently, all the arguments for keeping Mike and saving the money, I just don't understand it. Because it's not like next year or the year after the buyout goes to zero. No, it just drops $10 million every year till the contract's up in 5 years. So how much money are you really saving? You're not saving 56, you're saving 10 if we fire him after this year. The next year, 20. Okay, so how much money are you losing just in merchandise sales across the country because Florida State isn't going to bowl games? Like, it's got to be a lot, Mark. I'll never forget going from 2009 and the Tebow years at Florida to 2010 when Jimbo took over, and seeing over those next 2 years towards that championship run, you didn't see a Florida State license plate, a tag, a T-shirt, nothing. It was nothing but Bama around these parts and some Florida people. Boy, all of a sudden, it was everywhere. Every store, rack school, tickets. Obviously, people coming to games, that's going to be down. You spoke about the TV revenue. You've got an opportunity now to control how much you get from the conference. God forbid we got another 2-10 year, we might fall out of that 3-year average, or however they calculate that. We might, for the first time ever, not be in the top 3 of viewership. God forbid. And the ACC, what a dark day that would be. There's enough gluttons for punishment out there. I think we're safe. I think we'll still get a couple million people to watch every game, but yeah, it's hard to justify really kind of any of it. Like, okay, yeah, we saved a couple million with Gus leaving and Mike taking over play calls. It don't seem crazy, but that's about it.
Yeah. So the beginning of your statement was attached to the $2 million or whatever the figure saved for switching out offensive coordinators and going with Mike Norvell, basically calling his own plays, and then also keeping Norvell and saving the $10 million, the prorated buyout. Is a football season worth at least that month? Yes, it's worth way more than $10 million. The perception alone of getting dragged through another fill in the blank 5-7 under Mike Norvell versus if you have 5-7 under a new head coach that people like and think is doing something with the roster and provide some hope, that's a different look at 5-7, or maybe pulls off a 7-5. But yeah, a football season's worth a lot more than what you just ran down that they saved.
Yeah, I mean, we went through 3 and 5 wins with Mike Norvell before we went on our run, and was not everybody was bought in. I mean, there was some rocky. You had that moment in the middle of 2022 where you end up getting 4th and 14 and you beat Miami, and it was off like a rocket ship after that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you could anywhere from 5 to 8 games with a brand new coach, and you'd have complete buy-in. Everybody would be completely bought in. You'd be able to recruit high school at a different level. This is going to be looked back on in time. When you look at the recruiting, it's really incomprehensible how bad Mike Norvell has done to be at Florida State and recruiting at the level we are. Just to see it continue to drop. We got a commitment from a guy named Donald Akibi, 6'7", 275-pound offensive tackle. We got him over Georgia State. That's the kind of guys we're signing. Barely in the top 40 of transfer portal, barely in the top 20 high school. And I'd venture to say, if you break it down of who we've kept and who's panned out from those high school classes, they're probably not even top 20.
Yeah,
it was crazy. Like, sorry, one more thing. One of the big things we talked about on our show and on here too, back in 23 in those previous portal classes, you would see the rating of the guy going out be low and the rating of the guy coming in be high. Now the ratings of the outgoing portal players are higher than the incoming. And I've given Herb Hand a pass on this because I trust the guys he's bringing in. But everybody else, you know, you talk about bringing in Keon Coleman's and Jared Verses. We're not even. Give me the mediocre, you know, how we talked about a quarterback from the top half of the Big Ten. Give me that mediocre version of a wide receiver, this and that, you know. Outside of Deuce Robinson, it's been slim pickings. I'm going to stop though. More intellectual, less bitching. Excuse my language. But yeah.
Well, that's what it is. That's where you're at right now. So I don't have an issue with it because what else can you do? You know, it's not your responsibility. You are fan turned media person, some combination of the two. So you root like hell for them to win, to make the right moves, to win the games, to do all the things to make Florida State a championship brand again. But you also are going to tell the truth and tell it like it is. So, you know, and it's not your fault, or you don't need to come to defense for Mike Norvell or Mike Alford or the administration or the lack of funding or anything. It's just what it is. And when you run out of things to say and ways to try to figure out how they got to this point and what they can do to dig themselves out, at some point you got to throw up your hands because it just seems to keep piling up and not getting any better.
Yeah, all the data's in front of us. And what do we need to get better, Mark? A miracle. You need to be a G5 Cinderella, that everything comes together and you have some kind of magical season in 2026, because the data's all there and your roster's the worst one you've had since you got here. So good luck moving forward. You know what I mean? You've got Deuce Robinson. Luckily, you got the twins to come back. There's possibilities out there, but what are the NFL draft projections looking like for the current roster? You know, it's tough. It's a tough place to be. I'd love to. Again, this time last year, you saw a path to a possible redemption, but at this point, it's kind of tough. You know, we can sit here and talk about our 2027 high school recruiting class, but are any of these guys going to be committed at this time next year? Who's their coach going to be? It's up in there. And the schedule, you know, it's even worse because the schedule, we had a light schedule last year. Outside of that big Alabama game, which you got to play at home, it was, pretty light side of the ACC we got. Well, not next year. We get everybody next year. It's going to be a tough schedule. SMU, Louisville, Clemson, Miami, which Clemson's not world beaters right now, but but yeah, it's a pretty tough one. We get Pitt again, and Heinzel, who tore us up last year. I think we might get Virginia. We shouldn't play Virginia again. I think I'm wrong about that. But yeah, tough schedule coming up when you look at it. It's I'd say at least a game, maybe a game and a half. If I was looking just impartially at the seasons, doing a win-loss, I'd say you had 1 to 2 more wins available this year or in the 2025 season than you will in 26. Not to mention Bama's on the road as well.
You made a poignant statement before we started to record, George. At the conclusion of 2023, following 13-1 with the bowl game, but 13-0 in games that mattered, versus Indiana firing Tom Allen after 2-10. These two programs basically switch positions completely.
It's really unreal. And like we were talking about earlier, Florida State, the 2023 Florida State team was going to be the team to break the blue chip ratio that Bud Elliott has made famous and now has, for years and years was the gold standard. Florida State, I think, was 44 to 47%, somewhere in that range. If they would have been put in the playoff after 23, they would have had a chance to break the blue chip ratio. Well, now Indiana, built in a very similar way, minus the Florida State logo, to where, because Florida State, they still had 40% blue chip ratio. Doing terrible at Florida State is, recruiting in the 20s and you've only got 40%. Indiana didn't have that base. They pretty much did it all through the portal and, turning 3 stars into things. But yeah, complete and total swap. I wonder if Indiana will be able to carry it forward or not. Well, I guess we'll find out. But yeah, it's striking the similarities. The difference is Indiana, they got a shot to be in. And how crazy, even the conversations. Let's look at Kirk Herbstreit, okay? The biggest one of the most vocal voices out there campaigning for Florida State to get left out, even before Jordan Travis got hurt. We all know the incestuous relationship between ESPN and the college football playoff, how 2 Big Ten teams got in, 2 SEC teams with the restructuring that was going on and the deals that Fox and ESPN were making for the college football playoff. We know all that, okay? But then the next year, Indiana comes out of nowhere when they fired Tom Allen and hired our guy over there, Curt Cignetti. What does Kirk Herbstreit do that year? He comes out there and says, there's going to be a bunch of idiots out there that are going to talk about wins. Okay. In today's football, wins don't matter. And he's talking about how Indiana has no place in the playoffs, all this stuff. And then you come around, I thought they were one of the better performances of the losers last in that previous playoff. But he was crickets this year. He was just all glowing about Indiana. I could not believe that Cignetti did not just come out with a quote, that exact quote, because it's famous. Look it up, the segment, and Kirk Herbstreit literally with a straight face telling you wins do not matter in college football. He'd rather have 9-3 Alabama than 11-1 Indiana. And 12 months later, they're the national champions. It's just a shame Florida State never got their chance. You watching the Super Bowl this coming up Sunday there, Mark? The LA Rams, literally their entire O-line, 50% of it is Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, 2 of the most dominant NFL players in the game. Jerry and Jones at Jaguars doing great things. Renardo Green over at San Francisco, across the board. That defense, none of those teams were going to move the ball in that defense. It would have been a low-scoring game. Would Florida State been able to score enough to win it? I don't know. But when you look at the teams that got in and the margin of the victories, and I think with the benefit of hindsight, and you go look at that Louisville game, and oh man, it's not to get into all that again. But yeah, that's what broke the program, and we got to see what could happen when they let the team in for Indiana. So we'll see how they do. For some reason, I feel like Kurt is probably going to be a little better off. I think he's got that Saban mindset mixed with his own bag of goodies up there. I don't think they'll fall off like us, but they'll have us for a cautionary tale. I bet he's got analysts and people looking into what happened to Florida State after that year. But it's easy. It's a little easier to recruit with the national championship by your name for sure.
Yeah, and they've got a Big Ten media contract support to bring in 90 to 95 million per year. So they have that going for them. And they also have the luxury of playing in a conference where they're going to get 3 to 4 seeds. So you don't have to win the championship to get in.
Yeah. And, even the ACC, you talked about how it's kind of wide open, but I mean, look what Miami did. The 3rd best ACC team made it, to the championship game. I think we just have more parity than everywhere. Is the ACC? It's been the weakest it's been in a long time. Yeah, but I'd say so is the SEC. Probably not the Big Ten, just because they've added so many more names that might be the golden age for the Big Ten. But yeah, I think we found out this year they're just not teams like there used to be. You just can't used to be Miami, Florida State in the 90s, Alabama in the 2000s. You'd have guys who were literally backups until their senior or redshirt senior year, start for 1 year and go first round. Guys like Antonio Cromartie, who barely ever touched the field at Florida State, and is the prototype and one of the greatest DBs of all time. It didn't, that's just how it was. Not anymore. Not anymore. You're lucky when you have a great team, you have those guys and you're starting 22 with some pretty good backups. I saw the most laughable thing I've ever seen in my life. Somebody put up one of these polls, and it was a pretty big provider. I don't know if it was ESPN or 247 or somebody voted, and it had the top 50 college football teams of all time. And the top 15 were all 2010, like to now, or like the top 12. It's like 2019 LSU, 2018 Clemson, 2013 FSU came in at 13. But man, Indiana, I think they had number 3. I was like, this is the most crazy recency bias I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't care what anybody says. You take any team before 2020, maybe 2019 LSU is the one you cut it off when the portal really started to take off and they did away with the one-time transfer, or actually added the one-time transfer. Those 2019 LSU and before, I'll take any of those national champions to dominate any of the past 4 or 5 we've had, just because of the state of college football. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the modern athletes are that much better and everything else, but the dudes you have had coming off the bench, and you go back, I'm sure the Miami guys can tell you all about their 01 team. I can tell you 2013 FSU team, every single player, offense and defense, the entire starting 22 went to have successful NFL careers. A lot of them Pro Bowlers, 10, 15 years in the league. Like, as great as Indiana was, there's going to be a lot of guys working at UPS that just won a national championship for them.
Florida State Seminoles Live coming your way each and every week. George is here from the Renegade Report. We are breaking down Florida State football. And here's the deal, folks. Please like the video before you take off and subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. Turn on the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. We jump around Tuesdays and Thursdays for the most part, but we will be back, hopefully, God willing, next week. George, anything you'd like to kick in with a parting shot of sorts?
Parting shot. Well, let's just do this. The biggest news is Malzahn retired. Mike Norvell takes over coaching. I will say with my final thought, I was convinced Malachi Marshall was going to be the guy, and he was going to start over Ashton Daniels from Auburn, just because of the upside and the athletic potential there to run Gus's version of the offense. I wonder how Mike Norvell taking over affects that, if he likes Ashton Daniels or not more. I think that's the biggest difference. What offense are we going to be seeing out of Florida State? How is it going to affect that quarterback competition? We talked about it earlier. We need something kind of miracle to happen. Malachi Marshall putting on tape at the FBS level, like he did at the JUCO level, that could be the thing to do it, to maybe get you 8 or 9 wins and get some momentum. With Ashton Daniels' kid, I don't see the possibility there. I think getting you to a bowl game is like the ceiling for him. I think the ceiling for the Marshall kid's a lot better. So here's the hoping. There's no Kenny Dillingham here to coach him up. It's going to be all on Mike. But here's the hoping you get back some of that magic you had with Jordan Travis with one of these guys. And that's our hope for the year. And or maybe you hope that doesn't happen so that the administration will actually pull the plug, Mark.
All right, George, appreciate you showing up for us as always. Everybody check out the Renegade Report. Make it on back next week, and we will see you then.
Go Noles.